Welcome to The Explainer from all of us here at webfitnews.co.nz. Today, we're going to try and cut through all the noise surrounding the Epstein files and really get to the bottom of what these new documents reveal.
All right, let's get right into it. It's a really complex story. So what we're going to do is stick to the verified facts, what we actually know from this latest document release, and separate that from all the speculation flying around. So yeah, you've probably seen the name Epstein popping up everywhere again, and you might be wondering, why now? First things first, let's break down what these so-called Epstein files actually are and why they're making such huge headlines at this moment. Okay, this first point is so important to get right. These are not new criminal charges. That's a huge misconception. What we're talking about here are old court documents from civil lawsuits that were sealed, kept private. Now they've been unsealed. So think of it less like a new case and more like we're finally getting a look at documents from the past. So what's actually in these files? Well, it's a whole mix of things. You've got photographs, emails, witness statements, even flight logs and contact lists. Now, a lot of the names and allegations, they're not totally new. We've heard them before. The big deal here is the sheer volume of detail that backs things up and adds a whole new layer of context to relationships we already knew about. Okay, let's take a quick step back. For anyone who's maybe not as familiar with this whole story, it's absolutely crucial to understand who Jeffrey Epstein was. His background is really the key to unlocking everything that's happening now. So Epstein was this incredibly wealthy financier who had connections to, well, just about everyone in the global elite. He had a really controversial plea deal back in 2008, but then, in 2019, he was arrested again on much more serious federal sex trafficking charges. But he died by suicide in jail before he could ever stand trial. That meant the criminal case just ended. But it left this huge cloud of unanswered questions, and those are the questions that are still hanging over these documents today. All right, so let's get to the name that's probably been at the center of the storm for this latest release. The big reason this has captured so much attention, especially internationally, is the renewed focus on Britain's Prince Andrew. And again, let's be super clear. There are no new criminal charges against the prince in these files. What they do is give us a lot more context. We're seeing more photos, more emails, things that seem to reinforce just how long and frankly how deep his association with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell really was. And it seems it continued even after Epstein's first conviction, which is a key point. And the consequences of this association for Prince Andrew, they've been huge. I mean, just look at this timeline. He had that disastrous TV interview and had to step back from royal duties. Then he settled that civil suit. And finally, he was stripped of his military titles and royal patronages. We're talking about a massive, very public fall from grace. But here's a really important legal point we have to make. Even though he paid a multi-million-dollar settlement in that civil case with Virginia Giuffre, he admitted no wrongdoing as part of that deal. He has always consistently and very publicly denied all the allegations against him. Now, while Prince Andrew has been front and center in a lot of the media coverage, these files really start to paint a picture of a much, much wider circle of powerful people who were in Epstein's orbit. And you'll see a lot of other prominent names mentioned in these records, people like former presidents Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, business leaders, academics. But, and this is maybe the most important takeaway here, that note at the top is crucial. Just because someone's name appears in these files does not imply they did anything wrong. It's not an accusation of guilt. What it does do, though, is raise some serious questions about their proximity to Epstein and his world. So this all leads to the big question, right? Epstein died years ago. Why does this story still have such a powerful grip on all of us? Why the intense global attention? Well, it's because this is about so much more than just a list of famous names. Really, at its heart, this whole saga is about power and privilege. It forces us all to ask a really uncomfortable question. Can you be so rich, so powerful, so well-connected that you're shielded from accountability? Is there one set of rules for them and another for everyone else? And then there's the issue of survivor credibility. The story puts a massive spotlight on how we treat survivors of abuse, especially when they make allegations against the rich and powerful. Who do we believe and who gets dismissed? It really becomes a test of our entire system. And that leads right into the bigger picture of institutional trust. I mean, we're talking about everything from the justice system to the British monarchy. People are demanding transparency. And when these massive institutions just stay silent when faced with these kinds of serious questions, well, that silence can completely erode public trust.
The release of these files, it doesn't feel like an ending at all. It feels more like we've just turned the page to another chapter in a story that is a long, long way from being over. So, what happens now? Well, the way the institutions are responding or not responding is pretty telling. You have Buckingham Palace, which has basically declined to comment on any of these new disclosures. And that stands in pretty stark contrast to what most of us expect from our public figures, which is a high level of accountability and explanation. So, what's the bottom line? For a lot of the people mentioned, new legal consequences are probably unlikely. But the damage to their reputations, that's very real, and it's ongoing. What these files really do is they sharpen the historical record. They make it a whole lot harder for anyone to deny they were close to Epstein, or to just claim they had no idea what was going on in his world. And ultimately, this leaves all of us wrestling with a really critical and, frankly, a pretty heavy question. When you think about the survivors, the public, the integrity of our institutions, when accountability is delayed for this long, is that just the same as justice being denied? This report was produced by us here at webfitnews.co.nz, and we're going to keep following these developments, always focusing on the facts and the context to help you understand the wider implications for power, justice, and, well, public trust.
Because here at webfitnews.co.nz, we believe in explaining the story, not the noise. For more in-depth reporting like this, please do visit our website. Thanks so much for joining us.